Go for it.
3, 2, 1. I swear, I have never seen a more beautiful group of beards. What's going on? Are we even allowed to stream this? What's up, fellas?
This is like the Golden Circle, aka the Beard Coalition.
The Beard Coalition. It's a subsidy of the D&D Coalition,
yeah, exactly.
but with the beards.
Yep.
Tonight, we've got the very talented Brian, the bearded vlog nerd. Brian, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing well. I can't complain. I'm alive and I'm breathing.
Good. And of course,
it's funny though. Fire and Dice. This is the first time we've actually chat in person, so I'm really excited about this, man.
Yes, it is. Thanks for coming on, Brian.
Thank you for having me.
People actually come on the show to talk with Keith. They don't give a damn about the Coalition podcast or me. They just want to talk to Fire and Dice.
That's definitely not true.
Bro.
I've come to accept that, but it's okay. So, Brian, man, give us a little rundown. What are you? What do you do? What's your social security number?
All right. Well, I can give you that one. It's okay because I stole it from someone else. No, I'm kidding. So the Bearded Nerd kind of started about a year and a half ago. It really came from this love and desire to play D&D. I've always been into fantasy. I've always studied fantasy. One of the things I personally love is Lord of the Rings mythology. That's what got me into fantasy. I think that's what got most people into D&D, but for me specifically, I read, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion, Children of Húrin, everything that Tolkien had, even outside of his mythology, so like the Green Knight, things of that nature, I really loved. And I remember specifically as a kid getting my toys and creating worlds and just writing down worlds and whatnot. So fast forward, I grew up in Florida, grew up in Miami, and D&D was there you go, a man of culture, I see. Growing up in Miami, being sons of immigrants, like D&D, was more of like, what is that? We don't what the hell is that? And of course, my parents were like, "Oh, it's associated with the Satanic Panic." So great. So I didn't play as much. I played here and there in secret, and we played. We had fun. Fast forward college years, played again, played after college, and got back into it with Curse of Strahd. That's what really drew me back full force. Like I was like, I can't believe I had missed this for so long. And playing Curse of Strahd and playing a homebrew campaign got me thinking, man, I should start writing again, and I should really start creating again. I had notebooks, man, like those composition notebooks that you get at school, filled with ideas and stories and campaigns and characters from when I was a kid, high school, you name it. So I just started picking it back up, and my premise was, I bet you there's people like me who stopped playing or don't even know how to get back into it maybe, or just have never played. Why don't I, because I'm a visual learner and I like to go to one place where I can see and get tips, tricks, and everything and just see it visually, why don't I start doing that? So I just started doing it, and lo and behold, it turned in from me just giving out tips and tricks to then me interacting with the community and interacting and seeing how everyone being so accepting as D&D is, going into this, hey, yeah, this is awesome, let me share my ideas, and it just kind of just went out of control from there.
And what was the first platform you actually started with then?
Instagram.
Instagram was your first one.
Yep. So the beard. So funny enough, obviously I have a beard, and I'm a nerd. So I was like, oh, the Bearded Nerd. Well, the reason why my name is the Bearded Nerd Vlog was because the Bearded Nerd was taken, and I was like, curse them. Not really. So I've been trying to socialize. I'm just the Bearded Nerd, but I have to have that vlog there, and that's how it started. Instagram was kind of like the gateway drug, and then I started making YouTube videos, and then I started making Instagram videos, and started kind of talking on Facebook. Reddit, kind of, that's like the motherboard of everything D&D, and like the sense of, if you want to get down to the nitty gritty of D&D community, Reddit is a great place. So I was like, I want to get to know my people, my family, so to speak, in the D&D community. So
if you had to narrow it down to one platform that you would stick to, what would it be? Probably Reddit.
So if it's written word, if it's that type of content, Reddit. If it's going to be a visual, more interactive, I would have to say Instagram at the moment. The platform is really booming. It's kind of hit a crescendo and plateau, within Instagram, but you can still interact like no one, like no other, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And Brian, one thing I will say, man, that really turned me on to your content is you do these robust. Yeah, I said turn me on to your content.
You should have just stopped right there.
Yeah.
Well, you definitely have advantage on persuasion, my friend.
Oh my God. Not how I anticipate this conversation going, but hey, I like it. So screw it. Anyways, but what really got me interested in your content was you do these robust explanations of what you're posting about. So it's not just like, here's a picture, oh, here's do this, but you go into super detail and you give references and you say, hey, did you like this book or did you like this tool? This is where you can find it. And I feel like if I had to tell one person that's brand new to DMing to go check out a certain page, I'd be like, you got to follow this guy because you do a really good job at helping people understand how to run things.
Thank you. I mean, that's truly humbling, man. Like you guys, that you just saying that, like that's truly humbling because my goal, like I said, is I want to help everyone have the tools that they need to be a DM. It's very overwhelming. Being a DM, a lot of people don't realize it, but being a DM is very overwhelming. You have a lot of content that you have to produce and you have to create, especially when you have other pieces of podcast or other content creators like Matt Mercer, Matt Colville, Chris Perkins, like all these top tier DMs. They create this type of content that a lot of people try to relate to and really try to measure themselves against. That's a whole different conversation. But for me, my goal is how can I help that person? How can I help the audience member? Is there a way that I can explain something in such detail where even if they have a question to ask, it's a little bit more specific? I don't want them to ever feel like, man, this was a really vague post or this was not even a value add. I personally do not like to put anything or post anything that would not add value to either the beginner or an advanced DM.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that is, unfortunately, there is, and I'm sure we've all come across them, but there are some pages out there where I feel like they do it for the wrong reasons. You know, they post for, you know, the likes or the impressions, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, if that's how you get your rocks off, then so be it. You know, you're entitled to that.
They prefer, you know, what I've noticed coming from my professional background as well is that a lot of times they consider the short-term benefits of the likes and the subscribes and the clicks and the follows and all this other stuff. And they don't understand that long-term from a business perspective, like if you want to create this into a business, if you have the stuff to create this into a business, then you don't want your potential customers and clients to just see you as someone who's going to chase the quick cash. You know, for me, I'll be truly, you know, 100% transparent. I view this as a way to express my hobby. If I get a penny from it, that's awesome. If I don't care. If, you know, the dream the dream goal and job would be, someone pay for my minis so I can play. You know, that's pretty much it. I understand that people want to monetize on their hobbies. Totally understand, totally respect. I don't have anything against it. My personal thing is before I even accept a penny, I need to be giving out $100 bills to everyone who reads and sees my posts.
Maybe not literal $100 bills, but
no
value of $100 bills.
Exactly.
And Cameron,
clarification.
And Cameron,
first, Brian is giving out $100 bills. Go follow him.
And Cameron, you and I were just talking about that, how the importance of actually putting out good quality information and then engaging with people and building those relationships. And that's more important than the likes to us, and that seems obviously the same with you, Brian, is building the community and building those relationships.
Yeah.
You have to. You really have to. I mean, D&D is a collaborative storytelling game.
Absolutely.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not collaborating and telling a story with the people, whether it's virtually or at your table, what's the value?
Yeah.
Right.
And this is the one underlying theme that holds every single person together that we've ever had on the show, is that at the heart of it, they're a D&D player.
Mm-hmm.
They're not an Instagram celebrity. They're not an Instagram influencer. They play D&D, and they just share the stuff that they work on. Because the fact of the reality is that, yes, social media takes up a lot of time, a shit ton of time. But you know what else takes up a shit ton of time is prepping for your Dungeons and Dragons games. And I know my ratio is probably, for every 1 hour I spend doing social media stuff, I spend 3 hours doing D&D stuff. And that's because I freaking love it. And I think that all of us can say that.
I'll tell you what. So what I do is I pick out what are the topics I want to talk about if I were a player or a DM wanting to learn about XYZ, right? So I pick those topics out to distribute. But at night, I'm writing at least 1-2 hours a night on my new world that I'm creating. Well, it's kind of new. I'm actually putting it on paper. Terracona, which is the Dragonborn Dragon world. That is, if you really love something, it doesn't seem like work, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely. That's it's funny you say that. There's this my home game. We do Storm King's Thunder as like the underlying theme. Well, the underlying theme was from Storm King's Thunder, but there's this one little plot hook that I threw in there in like the second or first session, and they just took to it. And now it's created this whole world, this whole like side plot of, just development and storyline that I've created to coincide with that they haven't even touched yet. They've scratched the surface, but everything for that's kind of it's world ending. So they're gonna have to wait till they're higher levels. But
yeah,
I'm confident that once they step into those shoes, they're gonna be very well prepared, and it's gonna be so well fleshed out. Because man, there's nothing like latching onto that beat of inspiration and just running with it, and then just letting your mind just crank out words, because that there is so much fun. But Brian, I wanted to kind of ask you about your creative process. So you said that you write about 1 hour to 2 hours a night. You write a ton of content on Instagram. What is your process for whether you need inspiration or you're looking to accomplish a certain sort of task or project? What do you do?
So, and I've talked about this before, I have what's called an inspiration board. I have things that have inspired me from music, TV, movies, books, pretty much you name it, right? So I say, okay, what am I trying to create? For example, Terracona is the Dragonborn world. This is the world in which all Dragonborn and Dragonkin and dragons in general hail from in the world of Ecopia, which is my homebrew world. So I said, okay, what am I thinking about? What do I want to get? So I was putting stuff together, actual pictures, music pieces, even spurts of different songs, even just, 30 seconds. And I kind of put that all together and kind of said, okay, I really like the, and as a bit of a secret for all those viewing this, you'll kind of see that I'm very inspired by the Maori tradition and a lot of the Maori people. So when I created Terracona is actually, it's loosely translated in Maori for dragon. So I created a whole world kind of based upon a culture and people that I really find inspiring. And it kind of showcases that, hey, I want these people, these Dragonborn, to kind of have that Maori culture and spirit. So I took that. And then I started taking songs, and I started thinking, okay, well, the Maori would go in, they would they would perform the haka, which is their war dance, and it has that ancestral worship. And I'm thinking to myself, the Dragonborn are kind of like that in my world, so let me add that. But then incorporating, well, I also like the fact that the Dragonborn in my world kind of have feudal Japanese kind of linkage in the regards of how they fight, and everything like that. So all that coming together, I took from movies, from culture, from television, from music. I took all those things that I liked, kind of put them together, and like I said, created an inspiration board and said, okay, I really like this. I really like that. And I kind of took the pieces that I liked to help me inspire. And then the most important thing that I did, and if I could tell anyone this, it's underline, make it, highlight it, is I did my research to see if what I'm saying in a fantasy world, would it be possible? Would it be believable? And that's really part of my writing process is, okay, if my players can believe this, then I got something going.
Yeah.
No, that's really good. And going off that, so you had the idea and you have you call it inspiration board, storyboard kind of going off that. And I really like that idea. How do you, when you started building that world, or when you build any homebrew campaign, where do you start? Do you like to start big and then work into the world, go more specific, or vice versa?
So I started out, the realm of Legalheim is like the capital city. It's where all my adventurers start. It's except for one, and one instance, and that's the only instance where it has not started there. But they usually start, and I kind of built it kind of more granular.
Yeah.
But I put a hold to that because there was a time in my life where I was kind of controlling my players and not letting my players tell the story. Mm-hmm. So I decided to work on something else, and I worked on the cosmos. I worked on things that I can control, so to speak, and say, okay, I wrote the creation story, so to speak. The five primordial gods, as I call them, the father, mother, twins, and death. Like that, those are basically the five. That's in essence the five gods. So I started from the top over here, created all the different cosmology, the pantheon that we utilize, and then worked my way down.
Okay.
So going through that creative process yourself, and figuring out where your shortcomings are at, where you've done something like, oh, I really like this. What would you recommend to somebody just starting off that wants to embark in that endeavor of creating their own world, their own universe? What would you give them what piece of advice would you give them to start?
Don't go crazy like I did, but seriously, don't put pressure on yourself. First and foremost, that's like the prelude. Don't put pressure on yourself unless you enjoy doing this type of thing. If you enjoy creating and writing, I would recommend you start with an idea. Start with, what do I want to see as a player? If I was a player in this game, what would I want to see? And then that's going to make you ask another question. And then it's going to make you ask another question until you answer it. And then when you answer it, you got the first key. Mm-hmm. And then it builds that way. So I would just ask the simple question, what do I want to see as a player?
So, Brian, you said something about letting your characters write the story. Mm-hmm. So so with these podcasts, I always try to relate them to the audience. How can they add value to their games, or what can they learn from watching this? So how did you handle that situation of, you had this beautiful world that you fleshed out, you wrote, and that you love, it's your creation. How did you handle that situation, get over that hump of letting go of control of your players and letting them just, okay, here's the world, now do with what you want? How did you take that leap of faith?
Well, my players are completely new to D&D. So these players have never played. They've watched Critical Role. One of them has. So they shout out to Critical Role. But they have the notion that D&D is like Critical Role until that moment when, they were introduced to my world and said, oh, I see how this is, intricate. Letting that control go happened when I told myself, Brian, your players aren't having fun.
Yeah.
Being so strict with this is what they were trying to, create names for the town. When I specifically said, nope, this is the name of the town. You can't change it. They were trying to change the name, and the name of the town was not the most kosher, or it was more adult friendly, to be honest, because usually the first part of the game that we played, they were playing it like if it was Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So that was the theme until recently, where they were like, no, I really want to get serious about the game. But I noticed that they weren't having fun because I was being so strict with them.
Yeah.
And when I said, Brian, I can't be so strict, they're not having fun, it clicked in my head to say, wait a minute, I gotta loosen up. If they want to rename something, that's fine. This is only a game. I'm gonna let them rename it. Because again, at the end of the day, if you're not having fun playing D&D, why are you even playing?
Exactly. And I think that's a very important thing, that one, as a DM, you're able to admit that and that you focus on if the players are having fun. Because I've been through that same thing where sometimes I do feel like, and it could be just a mid-session, that I all of a sudden realize that I'm being a little too controlling, because it is your world.
Yeah.
And you built
It's your baby.
But then at the same time, it's like you said earlier, it's everyone's story, and you need to tell it together. And really, the players are really telling the story, and you're just helping guide them through that story. And so it's great as a DM when you can admit that, and when you get to that point to where you truly can let go and give it up to the players for the most part.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that I've noticed, just from running D&D games, and I do a pretty regular group play about every week, every other week, sometimes, but for the most part every week, is I used to spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours in prepping and knowing my NPCs and doing this and knowing the plot line. And what I didn't focus on was the things like the music, the lighting, props, stuff like that, you hand your play and they're like, oh my God. And I realized that I was getting so stressed out, and this is before my girlfriend and I moved in together, but I would always call my girlfriend afterwards and be so pissed, so disappointed because the session didn't go the way that I wanted it to. And, we kind of had a restructure, if you will. Two of the people had to step out. They were great players. They're wonderful, but they had some other things they had to work on. And we had two other players come in. And so that changed the dynamic of the group a little bit. But what I noticed is that rather than obsessing so much about my notes and doing this and doing that, I started worrying about the atmosphere. What can I do to create, this space that can make it feel even more real? Invest a little bit of time listening to different musics beforehand, so you can make a little bit of a playlist. This past session, which was absolutely awesome, I picked out an opera song that it started off a little bit slow, and then I timed it out so that at 25 seconds a woman's voice came in, and it was an opera performance. And I set the stage and I described the room, and I was paying attention to the time of the song, and I timed it perfectly. I was like, and then you hear a woman's voice emerge from down the hall, and then the music at the same time, you could hear her voice come in, and all my players looked around like, what the hell's going on? And it was just like the coolest moment. And before that, the session went they were supposed to get to that point 15 minutes of play, and that was 2 hours into the session because they were in a town and they were having fun before they teleported to this specific spot. And I had none of that prepared for the town, but it's what they wanted. It's what they wanted to have fun with, and it's just about not focusing so much down here, but focus what's on the other side of the screen. Focus about your players, because ultimately that's what's going to make the most fun out of the session.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Completely agree.
And just doing things like music and spending 20 minutes on some little stupid handout that you can give them. Like I did I gave them a keep, and I put the keep on a piece of paper. I actually posted over my Instagram, and as soon as I handed it out, they're like fighting over it, like, no, I want this room, and it was hilarious. There were a bunch of adults, and they're fighting over like who gets what bedroom, like over a bunch of kids. So
it's funny you mentioned that, because I bought a quill, or rather, I was given a quill and ink as a gift, and I bought certain paper that I can write on it. And what I've done is I've written with that quill, in a particular cursive manuscript, and give it as props. Or what I've done is I've Googled like Dwarven or like Norse runes, and have created like rune text on it to give to my players. And I noticed they would go bananas over that, because they were like, holy crap, this is awesome.
Yeah, the players do appreciate that kind of stuff too. Like for my brother, he was given an oath bow in our homebrew by his grandfather, and I had it. I found a website where it's actually supposedly Elvish writing, and you can transfer. That's what I put on the transcript in a little note that he was also given, and that's what he spoke every time he knocked an arrow on that bow, and it just adds that flavor to it. Something like that.
Yeah,
it adds emotion to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It gets them invested into it more too.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean that's how you create this from a game to a real tabletop experience. Mm-hmm. That's how you make it the collaborative storytelling effort.
Yep.
Right.
It's by doing things like that. And
you look at what's that? The game D&D. They're on Instagram and YouTube and whatnot, but they've been playing for 32, 34 years.
Yeah,
like, that's crazy.
That's a pure example of a group of at least 10 people who play together because they kept the story going for 30 plus years.
That's insane. Wow. So I want to kind of skip beats a little, or switch beats a little bit, if you don't mind. So your video content, you've produced quite a bit of it. How did you get into that? So somebody that is not necessarily like, so myself, as soon as I get in front of a camera, I get nervous. I start fumbling lines. I can say it 100 times beforehand, but as soon as you put a camera on me, I get super nervous. And it was a huge, daunting task to, make the decision to come on Twitch and, put content with my face on it and things like that. With the videos, because I myself don't do the videos like you do, and you've actually, from watching your videos, you inspired me to do more of it. So what piece of advice, how did you start doing that? How did you make the decision to say, okay, I'm going to sit down and do this, and this time I'm going to do it? What are some things you did for yourself that help you accomplish that?
Well, I kind of came out with like a script, so to speak. I said, okay, this is what I want to talk about, pointers, and this is what I want to, again, the same thesis of I want to help players. What would I want to hear as a new player or DM? And then when I wrote that down, I basically put a camera, I used my phone, turned it towards myself. I took as many takes as it was needed, because a lot of people think that it was like, oh, you just took that in one shot. Nope. Some of the first videos that I did, even till now, I probably take 2-3 hours just to record a 5-minute video, like.
I know what you mean with that.
I was about to ask you, Keith.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it just is what it is. So, I mean, if anyone is wanting to, if they have the bug to kind of record themselves talking and vlogging and things like that, write down a list of what you want to talk about, give yourself some pointers, take time and be patient with yourself, and just go.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Keith, what about you? I know you've done a lot of like your DM tip videos and things like that, and you're pretty active on YouTube. What are some things that you do to help you accomplish that?
It's like Brian said, you kind of just have to just more relax and do it, and get just, I kind of have an idea of the scripts, but then a lot of it is just me talking. Like the Friday Night Fights, that's all just live. We don't retake any of that. It's just how the fight plays out. The other videos, like the DM tips videos and stuff like that, it does. It can, like he said, a 10-minute video that I have can literally take 2 or 3 hours to film because you're redoing stuff, or you rewatch it and you're like, oh, that sounds stupid, or oh, I forgot to say this, or I wanted to add that. It just takes a lot of time because you want to make sure that you're getting your message across and that you're really explaining what you're talking about. You're actually articulating it in a certain way. So it can definitely take some time to put that stuff together.
Yeah. As some proof, I made on the giveaway winner announcement video that I posted. I had Kaya together we put together like an outtake reel beforehand, and that was only a fraction of the outtakes that we did. It was something so easy to do, and it literally took like probably 30 minutes. That little 45-second clip that we got from it.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I'm putting together just an outtakes of I've been keeping track of it for like months of all the dumb stuff we've done during Friday night fights or screw ups and stuff. And I was just going to, for fun, put that video out there once because it just shows how ridiculous it is sometimes trying to record those videos.
Yeah, that would be gold. I can imagine Josh is pretty hysterical.
Oh, yeah, he's the majority of it.
That's of course. Shout out, Josh. Love you, buddy. So, Brian, are you going to be coming to GaryCon? I know we kind of talked briefly about that, but are you going to be coming to GaryCon? Spoilers.
Everything works. I was going to say, spoilers. If everything works out, which I'm 90% sure, I shall be there with all my nerddom and all I can offer. I will definitely be there.
That sounds good.
Knock on wood, everything works out.
Yeah, I know that's one that I'm really looking forward to personally.
Yeah, I am too. Absolutely.
Gen Con was a lot of fun. Anybody that has or hasn't been to Gen Con, it's a lot of tabletop, but it's a lot more than just D&D. Obviously, there's a very heavy D&D presence there, but I noticed that we're a bunch of very small fish in a very large pond. And I felt everybody was kind of a small fish there because there's so many different fandoms that come together.
Right.
And Critical Role being one of the biggest ones, obviously, they had a name. Yeah. Other than that, like even Dwarven Forge had a little tiny booth, and people knew who they were, but it wasn't like they had this huge center stage and they were like the one company that was being showcased. Mm-hmm. But it was.
They seem like cool people and humble people too.
Yeah, they're all very nice, and we actually got to talk with one of the social media directors, Selena.
Selena, cool.
And she's very kind, and and even the CEO of the booth was at the booth themselves a lot of the time, and it was cool to see how they actually operate, and they're sitting like throwing train pieces around, like check it out, it's Dwarven Night, try to break it. Yeah. Like seriously, I want to break your piece.
It's funny. My claim to fame is when he started following me on Instagram, and when Joe Manganiello started following me on Instagram, I about shat myself when I saw those two. I was like, holy crap. Like, I mean, I don't think anything of it, but the way I see it is, if those guys, again, Stefan, like the creator, the CEO of Dwarven Forge, if he took the time to be like, oh, this guy's cool.
Right.
Like, that just goes to show you that he's such a down-to-earth guy. So, I mean, I can only imagine.
Well, and
the good thing is
right.
Yeah, and the good thing is you show up at GaryCon, they're going to be there, right? Didn't they confirm Death Saves and Joe are going to be there?
Yeah, I think they're both going to be there.
That's our chance to get a one-shot together and pull them into it.
Yeah, exactly. No pressure.
Oh, yeah, no pressure. Nope.
Yeah, let us know if you definitely are going. We got to get a one shot together with you if you have the time.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah. I mean,
I'm looking forward to it. I know that convention's rapidly growing, and I don't really know how many people it is now, but I think there's only like a couple thousand people at the last one. But I would guess that this upcoming one's going to be a lot bigger. Just because D&D's grown so much.
Yeah, and the good thing about that one that I like, I think it's more. I mean, that's pretty much all D&D basically. So it is a more intimate setting. So I think it's going to be a really good time. So hopefully you can make it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, there's a couple of things that my wife and I are working on right now, but once we get that settled, I will be there for sure. I will, whether I drive or either way, I will I will be there.
Sounds
Awesome,
good.
man. Yeah, that's great. So I wanted to ask you. So I know we've talked before in the past. I got to get the hand thing, man. I'm like all hand talking. That's always been my problem.
You're good.
But so Brian, I know we've had a few conversations on the phone just about kind of the direction in which we want to head and for our pages and our brands and things like that. And I know we're both big followers and fans of Gary Vaynerchuk, and I know we've discussed how, kind of the mottos that we've blueprinted our brands around have been, add value so that whenever you can, do that right hook, that it's impactful and that's going to get that result. So as far as the Bearded vlog, the Bearded Nerd vlog, the brand itself, in 5 years, what would be your biggest goal? And I want to ask you this in the sense of not just visualizing it, but also thinking how you can get there.
So in the next 5 years, my goal in the next 5 years is to be producing content in which you as a audience member, player, whatever, DM, can run in your own world. So, for example, kind of like how Dory is a campaign setting that you can play and write in and, pretty much incorporate. Really, you can incorporate in your own world if you wanted to. I want to be able to create those type of products for players and DMs.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's any DM that has written anything like any sort of original content, that would be a dream come true. Do you do any sort of work with RPG Drive-Thru or DM's Guild so far?
No, not yet. And the reason being, you spoke about Gary V, and Terracona is actually kind of the one, again, kind of spoilers, and I've talked about it before in other aspects, but Terracona is going to be my gift to my audience. It's the one piece of content that you will get campaign setting wise where you can play in, test it, do whatever. It'll be free.
Nice.
After that, I will move into a more a basis where you'll pay a certain price. I mean, I haven't set the price just yet, although I've been thinking about it because it's going to be a lot of content. But Terracona is going to be that one where I'm not putting it on the DM's Guild for money. Eventually, within the next 5 years, like I said, I would want to be producing this type of content anyway. Terracona is going to be my gift to my audience. To whoever wants to follow me or whoever said, oh man, the Bearded Nerd put out this free whatever, cool. Because, if you don't mind me taking a minute, I've had so many people DM me say, man, how did you start playing D&D? I'm broke. I can't afford this. Or, hey, either my parents or, hey, I just got let go from my job. But, like, all these different stories where the economics, their own personal finance and economics, hindered them from playing.
Right.
I'm sorry, man. I can't look at that and say, yeah, man, like, sucks for you, but give me the money. No, I want to be able to say, you know what? This is Terracona. It's a Dragonborn world because I love Dragonborn, and you can play in it for free. You can download it or print it, whatever, if you want to be old school like that. But you can download it and run it from your tablet, computer, whatever, and play with your friends for free. And if you don't have minis, you don't need it. Get gummy bears. I don't care. Or just use theater of the mind. But I want to be able to give someone that for free. And that's kind of like where I see myself, where people will talk about Terracona like, man, I remember having so many adventures in Terracona. And I remember having my first, dungeon dive and dungeon crawl in this world.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I see myself as well in those 5 years.
Well, brother, I think that's an absolute good plan, and I think that's a very noble way to get there as well, is
Absolutely.
by producing content that people are going to know and love, and then also doing it for free. Because at the end of the day, nobody should ever be deprived of the wonderful games of Dungeons and Dragons because they can't afford 15 different source books.
Yeah.
Gary Gygax would not have wanted it that way.
No, definitely not.
I've never met Luke. He seems like a really nice guy, but I don't think Gary would have, if a kid or someone, whoever, if someone could not afford, the D&D playbook or the D&D handbook and the DMG, all that stuff, I don't think he would pressure them into buying it. He would say, hey, you know what? This fell off the truck. Here you go.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like that's what I feel. So, and that's what I would want to do.
He apparently he used to be in the phone book even after he had published all this stuff, and people would look him up and call him at his home and ask him, like, hey, how do you do this sort of situation? And he'd be like, well, how did you handle the situation? And they'd tell him. Yep. He'd be like, well, then that's how you do it.
Yeah.
And to be somebody that, we talked about letting control of, your players and letting them roam free in this world. To be somebody that created Dungeons and Dragons and to give them that amount of freedom or notoriety, that speaks a hell of a lot about a man's character. And I wish that I could have had the good fortune of meeting him. And that's what I'm so excited about GaryCon, is getting there and learning more about, the man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
But I think that says a lot. So, but Keith, did you have a couple questions for Brian about world building?
Well, I think we've kind of touched on world building. The question that I had, I wanted to kind of go in, because you obviously have some experience, and it's 3 DMs here, is kind of talk about, I did want to find out a couple things about how you run your table. Just maybe like if you could tell everyone like any special rules you might have at your table, or how you control the table just in general. Not controlling the players, but just controlling the tempo of the table and everything, the gameplay.
Yeah.
So the way I call it managing the table.
Yes.
Nowadays, I used to control it, and then I kind of I deterred from that, and I said, no, I'm going to manage the table.
Mm-hmm.
My table gets pretty rowdy. They start, and I kind of have to. I actually do this kind of like a kid. I kind of just tell them to bring it down.
Yeah.
and that sign kind of says, okay, we got to calm down. We got to be quiet. We got to, pay attention. I really just focus on a couple of different cues. Music is one big cue. Here, there's creepy music coming. They're thinking, oh, is an enemy approaching? Is there something I should be aware of? And if someone else is talking and another person is trying to talk over them, I'm a little bit blunt. You speak first, then you speak, and then we take turns.
Right.
I really make sure. I kind of take it kind of like you were in kindergarten. Everyone speaks at, one person speaks at, at the time and at the table. And I'll be honest, my players have never, knock on wood, argued about something because we over communicate. We talk to each other. Right. We say, hey, how did you feel after the session, right? How did you guys like the session? What can I do better to run the session, maintain it? And I take those notes and I apply them. It's really just hearing what your players are saying, because when they, if they, let's say again, if they're having fun and they're a little bit too loud, it's nothing crazy to just say, hey guys, you got to keep it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing, or hey, you're speaking over someone, or hey, let's handle our props a certain way. Like, let's not be, let's not take away the joy and entertainment from another person at the table, even though the 4 or 5 of us here have been best friends for years. So
right. Yeah, I agree with you 100. I agree with you 100% on the. What was I going to say? Oh, geez. I completely lost my train of thought.
Oh no.
I've always said that DMing is like herding cats.
Yes.
Like you're always.
It is like hurting cats.
It's like no, don't go over there, don't go over there. Nope, quit eating that. No, don't do that.
Yeah.
But I think that if there's I mean, you hit the nail on the head with communication. You know, as long as there's open line of communication and talking to your players and knowing boundaries, knowing limits, knowing just having the open channel to discuss feedback, that's huge, you know. And whether it's good feedback, positive reinforcement, or whether it's like, hey man, I don't think that you do the most effective way at tracking initiative.
Right.
You know, I think that you could do it a way that's different, and here's the way that I do it that works for me. And I think you could maybe get a shot just to make the game run smoother. And granted, you know, I don't think that there's people out there that may not be comfortable, you know, with those conversations. But at the end of the day, man, it's also realizing, you know, for the audience out there, that this is a safe space. You should be able to talk freely and, you know that nobody's going to be mad at you. Nobody's going to take anything personally. You know, if anything, they're going to, like, analyze it. And, you know, if they're a person of logic and they can accept that sort of thing, they're going to look at that and be like, you know, I've noticed that before. Like, I kind of lose you guys whenever we do initiative or I see someone get frustrated. You know, and at first they might be a little taken back by it. Obviously, if they didn't ask for feedback, then be careful with how you word it. But if people are asking for feedback, if your dungeon master at the end of it is asking you, what did you think? Or if, you know, they throw out in your group chat that you have, hey guys, I want some pointers or some tips, let them have it. You know, let them say it in a respectful, kind manner, but give them that feedback. If there's something that you really do like, say, this is fucking awesome when you do this. Because, you know, and I think all three of us can confidently say that if our players did do that for us, then we would all be nothing but grateful for it.
Yeah, and that's where my train of thought was going. You must have been reading my mind, Cameron, was the communication. And we've spoken about that, how that's one of my biggest things as a DM is always asking the group how they felt the session went, anything they want to bring up, whether they have concerns. And if they want to, and I always let them know, you know, message me if you don't want to bring it up in front of the rest of the group. If it was something else that happened, message me directly. We can talk about it and then we can figure out things. But also, I love getting that feedback and tips so I can see it from someone else's view on how I actually DM'd and how things went from someone else's perspective. It helps out a lot. And
I've always noticed that sometimes the best feedback comes from newer players, you know, because there's sometimes things that we gloss over, you know, especially if it's a group we've played with for a while, that, you know, when you have somebody that has a fresh outlook on the game, you know, they're going to have the newest perspective on it.
Yeah, but, no, and you know, you mentioned something really important is, hey, perspective. Like, people have a different perspective. Everyone's level of fun is a little bit different. So with me, the way I view it is, okay, how, again, herding cats, but how can I not damper everyone's fun while I herd this cat? Like, and it's a balancing game. It's a balancing game for sure. But it's the most beautiful balancing game that I would ever want.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't agree more, man. Well, Brian, dude, it was an absolute pleasure having you on here. Keith and I...
Thank you both. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, dude. Well, we do have a couple questions for you to sign off. So, Keith, beauty before bronze.
Yeah, right. Well, you've got both, so I don't know when I'm supposed to go then. But
thank you.
So Brian, I kind of have a feeling I know the answer to this, maybe, or at least part of it. But what is your favorite PC you have ever used? Because I'm sure you've gotten to play at least once or twice in your days.
Oh, okay. So my favorite PC, Sir Dane Battlehammer. He was of the Warhammer clan. Dwarven, this badass dwarven paladin. Because I love dwarves as well. Like my mythos on dwarves is crazy, but he, unbeknownst to my players, will meet a certain end soon. Which it's just that is how the main villain is going to be introduced. It's with the death of this NPC, which this NPC This NPC was a convert. I actually played. He was one of my very first player characters that I created coming back into D&D, and this is kind of like his final chapter.
Okay.
So he's my favorite NPC so far, and PC, I guess.
That's awesome.
Oh, very nice. I would have guessed Dragonborn, but I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, I thought that's where you're going too.
Well, that's the thing though. I also have Balasar. He's actually the current player that I play right now in Behold the D&D podcast, where I'm a player at a weekly, and I have fallen in love with him. Paladin, Oath of Conquest. So he's all about conquering in the name of Bahamut, which, as you can see, can kind of be a little unethical if you're taking people out of their homes and land all for the sake of Bahamut, you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So dang, that's awesome. Yeah. So I got a question for you. So if you had the chance to either play D&D with, or have them as a DM, or have them as a player, past, present, or future, who would it be?
Oh man. Okay. So I think I would have loved to sat at Gary Gygax's table,
right?
For sure. I would love to play in a campaign with Joe Manganiello. So shout out Joe. Just saying, Joe. You know,
if you happen to be watching this, Joe.
Yeah, if you ever watch this, you know, I'm just saying I'd love to play with him because he's so him and Travis Willingham as well. Like they're such great players, and they're just like they're honestly the best type of players. I really would love to play in like a Jox Machina type session. If I'm just going to be 100% honest, just I would love to. DM wise, I would want to say either Chris Perkins or Matt Colville. I would probably lean towards Matt Colville because I love the intricacy of how he creates great battles and whatnot, and it's and like the politics behind it, all these different things. It's crazy. But he also learned from Jim Murphy as well. Like he kind of grew that similar style that Jim Murphy has, and Jim Murphy is like an old school DM. So like, but I would have to say I'm in that kind of vein of the Matt Colville, Jim Murphy type play. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, Colville's got a lot of that involved in his stuff, like the politics, intrigue, and all that kind of stuff involved with it.
Oh, yeah.
And that stuff, I love it when people can do that type of campaign well, because that's hard as a DM to get that stuff down. Because I feel like, you know, with combat and with wars and anything that's violence related, it's kind of easy. Yeah. However, orchestrating like political upheaval behind the scenes when your players are doing something else, that takes a whole nother level of understanding of your world and your players and what's going on. So that is
for sure. That's happening right now in Terracona, where I've created the Church of Bahamut, which, you know, just because it's all shiny and you know, platinum to for lack of better words, doesn't mean that it's, you know, good. So
what glitters ain't gold.
That's right. That's right.
What's not good about Bahamut?
Well,
I mean,
he was a good dragon.
Yeah,
he is. But remember, his followers can be bad.
Oh yeah.
They may say, "Hey, everyone should believe in Bahamut, and if you don't believe in Bahamut, well, you're gonna meet someone else." You know. Exactly. Hey, you never know.
All right, man. Well, Brian, where can people find you at?
All right, so you can find me on the Bearded Nerd blog, which is on Instagram. Again, the handle is the Bearded Nerd, but the Bearded Nerd blog is where you can find me. Instagram. Then you can find me on the same YouTube. You can find me on Facebook, but primarily I like to hang out not only on Instagram, on YouTube, but Reddit. You can find me on the Bearded Nerd as well. So pretty much, Twitter as well. I will tweet a lot of times DM tips. I'll just tweet a bunch of random stuff, but Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, I will be there. I have some presence there at least.
So is your YouTube page, I want to make sure, is it The Bearded Nerd Vlog?
So it will be the Bearded Nerd TV. You can check that out.
Oh, okay, okay.
Again, everyone took either the Bearded Nerd Vlog, so I kind of had to warp around. If you see my logo on the Bearded Nerd Vlog, there are different variations of that logo, which, by the way, I do have to shout out Dino Lab. Dino Lab made my logo, and they are wonderful people and artists. So if you ever need anything, please check them out. But yeah, you can check me there. You can check me out there. Excuse me.
All right, awesome.
And Keith, what about your beautiful bearded mug?
Thank you, sir. Well, you can find me on Instagram, whereas I do most of my work at, which is fire.and.dice. And then the rest of my stuff is on YouTube, which is under Fire and Dice. And then actually I do have the website coming soon, but that's not up and running. That's being built in the process. So I'll be releasing that information hopefully soon.
TBD.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Cameron. I'm the D&D Coalition. I like to hang out with people that are way more handsome and smarter than me.
AKA the Blonde Bombshell.
The Blonde Bombshell. Thank you, Lily. So you can find me on Instagram. I pretend to be on Twitter, Facebook, all those other things. So, guys, thank you so much. It was a blast. Brian, Keith, you guys are awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for coming on. It was a pleasure to finally get to speak with you and chat with you.
Yeah,
thank you for having me. I really appreciated it.
Absolutely. We hope you guys enjoyed watching, and we'll see you next time.
All right.
See ya.
Take care.
Have a good one.